How does the Bible describe the reign of Abijam and why? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 1 Kings on Walking Through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
Today we're going to be discussing 1 Kings chapter 15, verses 1 to 8. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, turn to 1 Kings chapter 15, verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 1 Kings chapter 15, beginning at verse 1. In the 18th year of King Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, Abijam became king over Judah. He reigned 3 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Maacah, the granddaughter of Abijam. And he walked in all the sins of his father, which he had done before him. His heart was not loyal to the Lord his God, as was the heart of his father David. Nevertheless, for David's sake, the Lord his God gave him a lamp in Jerusalem by setting up his son after him, and by establishing Jerusalem, because David did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, and had not turned aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. And there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all the days of his life. Now the rest of the acts of Abijam, and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And there was war between Abijam and Jeroboam. So Abijam rested with his fathers, and they buried him in the city of David. Then Asa his son reigned in his place. We've now seen the nation of Israel split into two nations, the northern nation of Israel and the southern nation of Judah. Their first two kings, Jeroboam for the north and Rehoboam for the south, were very similar in many respects. Both set up idols in the country and provoked the Lord to anger. Neither repented of their sins before they died, and both left their nation weaker than when their reign began. The difference between Israel and Judah would be that there would be periods of time in Judah where there would be a righteous king, which was why Judah would last over 100 years longer than Israel would before going off into captivity. Here with chapter 15, we come to the first transition in Judah following the division with the ascension of Abijam, the son of Rehoboam. The formula for introducing the various kings of Israel and Judah will be in relationship to the reign of the king of the other nation. This fact will help us develop our timeline from here on out. In chapter 15, we learn that Abijam assumed the throne in the 18th year of Jeroboam in Israel. This makes sense, for we know that Jeroboam reigned for 22 years, while Rehoboam only reigned for 17. Seeing as how this is now the 18th year of Jeroboam, it also means that Rehoboam reigned slightly longer than 17 years before dying, for he and Jeroboam began reigning around the same time. Abijam reigned for 3 years, and his mother was Maacah, the granddaughter of Abijam. Since 2 Chronicles 11:21 will say that Rehoboam married Maacah, the granddaughter of Absalom, we can know that Abijam and Absalom are the same, meaning that Rehoboam married his first cousin once removed. So how does the Bible describe Abijam's reign? In short, it was evil, in that he walked in all the sins of his father. That means that the idolatry continued, the perversion continued, and all the other abominations that went with it. He did not walk in the ways of David his father, with father meaning great-grandfather here. Those days had been long forgotten since the latter reign of Solomon, some 35 years before. No, he walked in sin and never left it, hence the likely reason his reign was so short. However, because of God's promise to David concerning the Messiah, God would not cut off the house of David like he did the house of Jeroboam. He would give Abijam a son who would reign after him, the man named Asa. Asa would come to the throne in the 20th year of Jeroboam, meaning that even though it is said that Abijam reigned for 3 years, it was only parts of 3 years, likely closer to 2 in actuality, which is why in our timeline we have Abijam reigning from 913 BC down to 911 BC. As far as anything Abijam accomplished, 1 Kings doesn't tell us anything other than he was at war with Jeroboam for his entire reign, much like his father was. Abijam's son, Asa, though, will be different, as we will see in the next lesson. Before closing, though, I would like to talk for a few moments about the epitaph of David. By the time Abijam became king, David had been dead for about 57 years. Yet, even with this being true, David was not forgotten to the prophets who kept the records of the kings that followed him, including the writer of 1 Kings. David was the man after God's own heart, the man that did what was right in the sight of the Lord, not turning aside from anything God commanded all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. That doesn't mean that David didn't sin before the matter with Uriah, for we know David lied on multiple occasions. Rather, it meant that David always sought to do the Lord's will in all that he did, but did from time to time sin like the rest of us do. The thing that made the matter with Uriah the Hittite different is that David committed adultery with Uriah's wife Bathsheba, an act that David did willingly, and then sought to cover that up by murdering Uriah. There was no justification in committing such sins, both of which were worthy of death under the law of Moses. Now, yes, David was forgiven of all these sins by God when he repented, but those sins stained his character, as it is still mentioned here in 1 Kings 15. But David didn't go off into idolatry as his son, grandson, and great-grandson did, thus leaving the avenue of forgiveness open to David. As long as one served idols, there could be no forgiveness of sins, because God will not allow his followers to follow after other gods and still be in communion with him. That is why captivity would eventually be necessary to cleanse Israel and Judah of this habit of worshiping other gods. But it is because of this, of the forgiveness of sins, something only a man wanting to follow God would seek, that David's epitaph remains the man after God's own heart and the standard for uprightness of all the kings of Israel and Judah. No, David wasn't a perfect man, but he was a forgiven man, and can be remembered as such, just as he is here in 1 Kings. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 1 Kings chapter 15, verses 9 to 24, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.